David Seymour.
Well, Mr. Speaker, could I begin by agreeing with some of my colleagues and tributing Gareth Hughes for bringing what I believe is a well-intentioned bill. This House at its best exists to improve public policy for all New Zealanders, and I think that is what Mr. Hughes has sought to do with this bill. And I've actually corresponded with him at some length about the bill and how it might work and whether or not its intentions, which are good, might be matched by good results. And I felt that as the Parliament's only electrical engineer, I should come and explain why I think the results of Gareth Hughes' bill may not match the good intentions. And I think the question that we should ask ourselves, Mr. Speaker, when making legislation or when we regulate as ministers, we should ask ourselves, what is the problem definition? What is the market failure that we are seeking to allay by taking this action? And as far as I can understand, there's a number of concerns Mr. Hughes has. One is that there's collusion. He is suspicious that the prices that different retailers offer to buy back have moved somewhat in sync in recent times. Mr. Speaker, that's not unusual in a commodity market. The whole point is that there's really only one type of product and the price is fairly uniform across the market. And if indeed there was collusion occurring, it would be an open and shut case for the Commerce Commission under existing law. So I don't think there's a problem that justifies action there. The next, it gets a bit technical, the idea that for distributed generation, the call on distribution networks is somewhat smaller than for what it is for other forms of generation. As the members put it, we're really just sending electrons next door to the neighbour's house. And that's not quite accurate. It's not so much the electrons that move. They drift at about 7 millimetres per second. It's the wave of energy that energises the grid that moves and does so almost instantaneously. And the point of transmission and distribution networks is that they are, with very small line losses in general, equally useful wherever you may be. That is the point of a network. And if you wish to have access to that network, then you must pay for using it wherever you may happen to be. I think there's an argument, Mr. Speaker, that other reforms should take place, that there should be more time sensitivity in the price charged for access to distribution and transmission as it becomes technically feasible to measure the time of use, or at least cheaper to do so. But it's simply not the case that because your dependence on the grid is perhaps more fleeting than others. The fact is, if you still want to be able to access the grid, then you have to be able to pay to access it. And finally, the idea that there simply is not enough certainty in what the future price will be. Well, I agree. That is a problem that all generators face. The Honourable Ruth Dyson brought this up. Whether you are Mighty River Power or whether you are, Mr. Speaker, or perhaps the Jerry Brownlee who tells us he has a solar panel, you face that uncertainty. But again, there's no market failure here. There's actually solutions already emerging in the market to insulate people against that uncertainty. People will allow you to have solar panels installed, owned by a third party, and they take the risk away from you. So there are already market solutions to this perceived market failure. So, Mr. Speaker, it seems that the market failures that the legislation's supposed to be addressing either don't exist or are already well addressed by market mechanisms. However, there are unintended consequences. What we're ultimately saying, if there's going to be some sort of fairness in a deal, then some authority has to know what a fair price is and be able to enforce that it is charged over time. And there's really two ways you can get a price wrong, too high or too low. If it's too high, it will actually discourage retailers from entering the market, which would be disastrous from the whole intention of Gareth Hughes' bill. And if it's set too low, then of course you're going to end up starving retailers from being able to actually serve the market that way. So whichever way you get it wrong, you're going to actually counteract the intention of the bill. So, Mr Speaker, I'm opposed to this bill. It has very good intentions, but for all the reasons I've laid out, the results will not be good enough to match those good intentions. Thank you, Mr Speaker.